Seth Partnow of The Athletic. What is new, my man? What is new?
I don't know. It's been a while. Probably a whole
Yes,
bunch new. It's been months at least since we've talked, but it's good. How you doing?
I am doing well. You formerly have worked for the Bucks, so I have to start there. I have to
Sure,
start there.
sure.
It's a wild season, a wild year, it feels like. I mean, the offense has been pretty good. I mean, everybody was talking about the Pacers. What great offense. Like the Bucks are right there in terms of, a lot of the numbers. Um, Adrian Griffin out, Doc Rivers in. How do you make sense of this Buck season?
So on the first part, and this is, it's not something I can report on. It's just, you started to hear that stuff wasn't right
Mhm.
from even before training camp started. And you don't want to read too much into that because moving from assistant to head coach, it's a big job. It's a big jump, and we've seen a lot of people who are very good assistant coaches not make the jump, and some do it very well. So you didn't want to rush to judgment, but then I think from the start of the season, part of it was just the contrast between just how organized a Mike Budenholzer team is, and
Mm,
then seeing the sharp contrast between that and sort of what we've basically seen for most of the year, and some of the basic stuff that this team was not doing did not get better. And so I think that internally, they look at their record and they say, okay, well, we've kind of played a soft schedule. We've played a lot more close games against bad teams than we should have. We've thankfully won those games, but our record is not reflective of how good we've been, and how good we've been is not good enough to win a title. And we're in title or bust mode every year until, the wheels fall off of Giannis, basically, as they should be. So I think that's the background on why they made a change. And it's hard on Adrian Griffin. I mean, he's been a guy who's been on the top of next coach list for a while. It's a tough first job to get, but at the same time, it's hard to say that you just look at kind of their even in considering personnel, that just how not just the defensive fall off, but how it fell off. Transition defense being as bad as it was, like on some level, you can kind of that's kind of a scheme and buy-in thing rather than a talent thing. Like, how much talent
mm,
does it take to get back? You know,
right, right. Uh,
and they just weren't doing that.
right. So roster wise, you feel like defensively, this team could be good enough to win a championship.
I mean, you switch Drew Holiday for Dame,
Hmm.
and for that matter, Grayson Allen for Malik Beasley. That's a pretty big defensive downgrade in the backcourt. But you still have two, I would say, defensive player of the year level players. Brook Lopez is having a tremendous
Yeah.
defensive season. So you look at that and you say, can we get to 12th defensively? Can we,
Yeah.
be average a little bit above? And then we're going to be, the top three-ish offense in the league. And is that good enough? That's not a classic championship pedigree, but it's in there. You're there with a chip and a chair at least. And you certainly have, best player on the floor equity in any series you play. So I think if you're looking at what the model is going to be for the team, it's a team that the defense I don't think has really been a problem in the playoffs so much as the offense just grinding to a halt. And you bring in a guy with the kind of the proven chops of Damian Lillard, both in the playoffs, and if you look at players who over the last several years have performed at their best against the
Yes.
best competition, Dame is at the top of that list. So you get that. And it's can we get to the playoffs healthy? Can we find enough depth to have a 7.5 man rotation in the playoffs? Can the defense be just good enough to get us there? Those are the questions that they were hoping to. Those were the questions they were hoping to have to answer this year. And I think you had to get to, all right, we're playing functional basketball. We're playing where everyone's on the same page, doing the same thing, and we know what we're doing night in, night out. And I think that last part, like, you couldn't really evaluate everything else because they're giving up layups off of made buckets
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
about
That's tough.
about a 50% higher rate than the rest of the league.
Yeah.
And you're just giving up too much just of like basic take care of it stuff.
Yeah. I've been beating the drum that I just believe in Dame and Giannis as playoff performers more than any other duo in the East. Is that fair?
I think so. I think Boston's going to be really interesting. I think that the Tatum Porzingis pairing, assuming both, Porzingis
Yeah.
especially is healthy, I think that gives them a, well, all right, it's late in a close game. We need to run something to get a good look. What do we do? Like that pick and roll, pick and pop is a better kind of fastball than they've had at any point
100%. Better start,
during the show.
better top end fit, I would say.
Yeah, and just that's just such a hard action to guard for, I would say, every team in the league. I mean, Milwaukee included, because all right, who's guarding Porzingis? If it's
Yeah, that's true.
if it's Giannis, okay, you can guard that action, but then either Lopez is off the floor or he's guarding, the rest of their players all can put the ball on the floor.
Mhm.
So that puts you in some weird stuff. Or if it's Lopez, or then Porzingis pick and pop to 28 feet, it's tough cover for him. So that's a really interesting kind of matchup game that they can play against. They can play against Milwaukee. They can play it against Philly. So I think that's a Lillard and Giannis is a better combo, but as far as a functional playoff combo, that's the best one Boston has had in this kind of this Tatum led run.
Yeah, speaking of Philly, who knows if they're even a threat anymore? It looks like Embiid's going to have surgery.
I mean, it's always something,
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so staying on the Bucks, what do you think of Doc as a coach in general?
So I think at the very minimum, like, this is a team that will do that will start to do the basics better.
Okay.
And it's the first bit is there was that gap. And again, the gap was exacerbated because I think Mike Budenholzer team is probably the best team in the league at doing the basics well. And so that the difference just looked so big. But just getting back to that point, that's the first thing. Second thing is, I mean, the team will be motivated. They will play hard. They will listen to him. There are definitely questions about his, late game management. A lot of people have talked about his playoff record is certainly questionable. Some of that's maybe the talent he had, but at the same time, like, he is of coaches who've coached in a lot of games, and you got to be doing something right to play in a lot of elimination games. But he has by far the worst record of a coach who's coached in a lot of games with a chance to move on to the next round. As a whole, the league wins around 60% of those games. Rivers, over his coaching career, has won about a third of them.
Yeah, that is interesting. When I look at the East, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but there's probably two coaches that come to mind that are clearly better. It'd probably be Spo and Nurse, and I don't know if they have enough to beat the Bucks.
I mean, certainly Philly is sort of dependent on,
right.
Yeah. And then, I mean, again, you talk about teams that don't have enough. I kind of think JB Bickerstaff's done a nice job this year. And he really got a lot of flack early in the year, but you look how they've played once they suffered some injuries, and that's a team that guards. So I'm not ready to put him on the level of certainly of Spo, but I think he and Tibbs have both done really nice jobs this year as well.
That team doesn't feel like it has a guy that they could throw at, like a Giannis or a Tatum, right?
Who's that?
Bickerstaff.
Yeah, no, it does not really.
Yeah.
You want to hope that Mobley could get there, but Giannis is a little too big and Tatum's a little too quick.
Yeah, exactly.
New York is almost more interesting than that because OG Anunoby is sort of
great fit.
Who you have a guy who has to guard both Giannis and Jason Tatum. Name a better guy in the league other than 26-year-old Kawhi.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, I don't know how you feel about this either, but looking at OG and RJ Barrett is such an interesting case study, in my opinion, because I feel like one player is probably not that much better than the other, but OG fits the NBA style of play and the way the Knicks played with their two pillars, Jalen Brunson and Randall, just so well.
I think the latter point is the better one, is that, whatever the difference in ability is, it's sort of the best things that a lot of this stuff that Barrett does couldn't get used because there was two other guys who were also both left-handed and also kind of wanted the ball in the same spots.
Right, right.
That sort of blocked him from doing that. And then, as you say, I think Barrett has had some good defensive seasons, but he's not OG Anunoby.
Oh yeah, no, no
And
way.
and so yeah, in terms of fitting in and also just fitting the style, the physicality of his defense fits that roster and that coach so well.
So, do you feel like OG just clearly a better basketball player than RJ?
I think he is. I think, as you're hinting at, I think the difference in their ability is less than the difference in their impact for the Knicks.
Right.
I think the fit of OG just makes the gap in ability just so much larger.
Yeah. Speaking of the Knicks, what are your thoughts on their ceiling? They were the hottest team in the NBA until they lost to the Lakers last night, but they didn't have OG and Randall. So, I mean, how much could that game really tell you? I mean, they were just at a talent deficit at that point with those two out. Where do you land on their ceiling at this point?
I mean, on one hand, I worry about if they have enough shooting.
Mm.
I think that the step back Quentin Grimes has taken this year is probably, it's the difference between him and Josh Hart is, right now, Hart has certainly played better this year. But if you get into a playoff situation where we've seen teams be able to scheme Randall really well, and you get in a situation where you need that guy in that spot to space the floor, and if he's not going to be on the floor, then do they have enough of that? They have an interesting decision when they return to health. Isaiah Hartenstein has been great.
Oh yeah.
Does he keep starting when
yeah.
Mitchell Robinson comes back? You think so?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's right. I sort of wonder if that's, given the esteem in which Mitchell Robinson seemed to be held.
I think it was always like, what are you leaning towards with them two? Like, you want better offense, you go on iHeart. Obviously, with defense, it was Mitch, but now iHeart is breaking up plays on defense. He's doing an awesome job on both sides, and then I think he's like a great fit when you have players like Randall and Brunson as like that connective piece.
I mean, certainly the passing is certainly a big part of it. The thing you lose is Mitchell Robinson might be the best offensive rebounder in the NBA, and you get in a situation with a team that might be a little clunky on offense, playing a little dump and chase, to use a hockey term.
Okay.
With him, cleaning up on the offense it would be a nice little option to have. So so I do think they're probably still they're the same guy short that everybody else is.
So you think they're a player away, and if so, like what kind of player? Who could that be?
I mean, it's a big wing who can shoot with some ball skills. The guys that grow on trees.
So like
Bridges, yeah.
Oh, so like OG with ball skills.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, right. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah.
I mean, the Bridges thing makes sense. I mean, Nova.
Yeah.
I mean, right.
I mean, maybe at like even just like a slightly better version of like, or even the actual like Kentavious Caldwell Pope or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, KCP
like,
would be great for them. Yeah,
but I mean, he's not going anywhere. But that, like,
100%.
That sort of model of player is probably, I think, the guy they're short. And then obviously that, and need Randall play well in the playoffs, which we haven't really seen in the last couple of years.
Okay, let's shift to NBA scoring in general. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. Steph 60-point game recently. We've seen 70-point games. Maxey dropped 50 recently. Do we have a scoring problem in the NBA?
So this is getting into a realm of more aesthetics. I think that, and I think this is larger than just scoring. I think that I don't know. I don't want to sound like too much of a music head, because I'm not, but it's like, if something is just, no, there's a certain like the NBA is at risk sort of becoming kind of ambient.
Okay.
And just between, the music's always playing in the gym and the teams are running up and down. And there's not dynamics to it, where, the best music has hooks, it has drops. And so
Interesting.
I think if there was a way that, sure, teams going on a scoring binge is fine. It just, a scoring binge can't last 48 minutes. Otherwise, it just sort of becomes ping pong. And I think I prefer this to like the punch you in the mouth style of the 90s. But I think we could move a little more back that way. And I think that would be, almost like the baby bear solution. I think just a little more resistance, a little more kind of ebb and flow and how fast the game is going up and down as well.
Any suggestions in terms of fixes?
I mean, I think I would like the no call to come back on some of these, on some of the floppiest behavior. I continue to I know no one wants to see a bunch of like palming and gather step travels and moving screens being called, but I think that cleaning some of that stuff up, I think, gives defense a chance. Like if a guy can change directions twice after he picks up the dribble, like like a running back can do that, but you can tackle him,
Right.
like what are you supposed to do with that? But then also just, and there's been times this year, and it tends to get better in the playoffs, where the play that I just hate is the defender is in good spot and the offensive player just kind of throws their arms into their chest and like flails something up, and the ref puts air in the whistle. Just like, let that ball go out of bounds going the other way. Like, no, that's not a foul. You created that contact. He had his hands back. You hit him in the chest. You don't get anything from that. I would like to see that.
How do you feel about the G League's 1 for 2 or 1 for 3 free throw? Because I feel like it not only speeds up the game, but more players miss that first free throw, right?
Yep, it would drop free throw percentage a little bit. I think that would probably play a little into the game being so up and down. Like,
Okay.
that the time at the free throw line is kind of important little pause.
Okay. It's basically going what you're saying about the music, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, like you
Yeah.
need those pauses a little bit.
I did some estimation on this a couple of years ago. Actually, I was at a this is probably about 9 years ago. There was the WNBA did a preseason scrimmage with the Lynx and the Mystics,
Okay.
and they were doing some rule experimenting, and they experimented with a similar rule. I thought it wasn't one to get two. It was like a 2-shot foul, you get a point, and you shoot a free throw for the other point. But it's the same thing, basically. It's a 2-shot foul becomes one. And I estimated that based on the amount of kind of grab ass that like gets eliminated between free throws, you probably save 6-8 minutes of running time in a game. Which maybe not as worth it, but I think that the especially as we're talking about also talking about rest and load management and stuff like that, that 45 seconds of everyone catch their breath, a couple subs come in, shoot a couple of free throws, I think that's pretty important given the pace of the game today.
Yeah, like from what I'm gathering is that I don't think that you feel it's that big of a problem yet, but it could be getting there eventually, like the scoring.
I do think it is. I mean, part of it is it's so hard to contextualize like what these big nights mean. Like, and some of that is also just the way the way teams are sort of just willing to put the ball in one guy's hands and let him cook. Right. So you combine that with a pro offense environment with about the fastest pace as we've seen in who knows how long, you're going to have some nights where Luka's got it going, Steph's got it going, and they're going to keep it going all night for 35 minutes, and they're going to put up 35 shots, and 20 of them are going to go in, and they're going to end up with 58 points or something like that. And
go ahead.
No, and that's fine, but it's sort of like those games aren't as much of a super duper outlier as they would have been in across a number of different dimensions in sort of 10 years ago.
All right, Kuminga, there seems to have been like a little leap recently, like an ascension from Kuminga. Does that change the outlook of this season or the Warriors' future?
Nah, they're done. 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 Th
They're done.
They're
Let
done.
me. So.
Sorry.
Wait. They're done for this season and the future.
I mean, the reason they're done is like they were not a deep team, and it's just, this happens. I think that Steph is still thereabouts with how as he's ever been, but Draymond has clearly slipped. Clay, I mean, he's had two of the worst injuries a basketball player can have, and he's not getting any younger. And Kevon Looney, who's also like kind of an unsung hero of a lot of their runs. I think, I mean, he's playing, 15 minutes a game off the bench now. And I think so those guys all sort of having aged out of that like top level play. I think that in as recently as their last title, I thought that Looney was one of the more underrated players in the game, and
Right.
probably should have gotten all defense consideration, but he's just not at that level anymore. And they've got some guys who can fill in some stuff. I mean, Kuminga is playing better, and I'm going to butcher his name, but Podzemski
we could say Pods, right?
Yeah, Pods he's been very good for a rookie, especially kind of where he came in. But it's if you're looking at that team as a title level team, like it's gone and not coming back for Draymond and Clay and Looney, and Kuminga's got so far to go to get to that level. And how many more years does Steph have where he can be the guy?
Yeah. Is the issue with the Warriors that the only way to blow it up would be trading Steph, and they won't trade Steph?
Yeah. Or, I mean, or what could you get for Draymond or Clay or
I mean, what value do those guys have that's more valuable than what they are for the Warriors,
Only takes one.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's a good point. But this is also, I mean, it's I understand why there's sort of panic and despair coming out of, but they've had a decade-long run.
Yeah, true.
And this is, and it's sort of, their run was already longer than most teams that has a stable core get. And this is sort of what happens. Like, you keep your core together because it works, and then the guys get old, and the system punishes you in such a way that unless you're the Spurs and you have your team, and then, oh wow, we got Kawhi Leonard now. Like, some things have got to fall into place. And, I think Kuminga has been a disappointing player over the first couple of years of his career. That said, it shouldn't be taken as his disappointment that he's not Kawhi Leonard. Like, that's a solar eclipse, right? You can't count on that happening. We're 15th guy. We got just another MVP level guy, no big thing.
Yeah. From what you're watching, you're watching the Lakers play. They look pretty good last night. Would you be surprised if they made a deep playoff push?
I would.
Okay.
I liked a lot of the moves they made this offseason. It's just kind of a lot of their peripheral guys are all just playing a little worse.
Yeah.
And, and some of the guys they acquired kind of midseason last year, like, Hachimura has been much more the Washington version than what we kind of saw for parts of last year. Austin Reeves has been up and down. He hasn't quite. I mean, I thought he was going to have a really big year, especially coming out off of the Team USA stuff this summer, and it's been up and down for him. I think it's fair to say. I still think he's a good player, but I think that we're going to be waiting for a long time if we're waiting for him to be like a third star type player. And so then you just, I don't know if we've talked about it or not, but I've never been a big D'Angelo Russell guy. And I think they missed Dennis Schroeder and so you look at what are their options other than hope LeBron and AD go crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what that kind of happened in the bubble, right? A little bit.
Yeah, but they also, I mean, if you look at like the rest of that group, I mean, think of that. They had
physicality. They had physicality.
They had Morris and Kuzma and
Dwight Howard.
Yeah, and then he was good for them.
Yeah,
and he gave them good stuff. So they had they had Rondo was pretty good in the bubble, and they were
He
tough.
was very good. And also Rondo brought this to the sideline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were a team that also, I mean, one of the if you remember back, they were a team that took as good advantage of the bubble circumstances, and not just like the fact that it was a good shooting environment and AD, shot the piss out of the ball in ways he has never really done in a sustained fashion the rest of his career. But they were intimidating on their sideline. If you remember how often
Yeah.
it's almost like the benches were almost like hockey benches where
Well,
line
yeah.
change, jump over the boards, and they were like you see hockey
Right.
players up
I
like
mean that
banging on the boards and stuff like that. Like the Lakers were the team that was doing that, and I think that like relentlessness between the Morris and Kuzma and Rajon and everyone kind of chirping a little. I think they had an intimidation factor with that team that this team doesn't really have.
yeah, the bench was the crowd in that situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I mean, it's been a while since you released the mid-range theory. I don't know if you're writing a second book, but if you were,
I am.
okay, great. What would that book be? The question was gonna be, what would that
Yeah.
book be about? But now I can ask you, what is that book about?
This is not the title, but the working concept is sort of a fan's introduction, primer, guide, what have you, to basketball analytics.
Okay.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff. We're at the point where a lot of stuff gets thrown around, a lot of acronyms, a lot of numbers, a lot of decimals. And it's I think even for someone who is open to this and understands why you use these kind of techniques to look for edges. All right, what should I be looking at? Help me understand more what I'm seeing. How do I figure out if something I'm seeing is real or just something that's, you hear people say small sample size all the time. What does that mean? What
Right,
is it?
right, right.
What is a sample size? Like, so I think a little bit of that. I mean, some of it is it's funny. My neighbors across the street have three sons who are really good athletes. A
Okay.
couple of them won the state championship football. And they were they found out kind of what I do for work, and they're like, so what's a good, like, for a 15, 16, 17-year-old, what would be a good, introduction to learning how to think about basketball this way? And I'm like, there kind of isn't one. So, but read the mid-range theory. It does some of that, but I mean, it's not a 101 level book at all.
Do you think that could give a young player an advantage if they learn the analytics of the game, or is that something you might want to learn later in your basketball life?
That's a good question. I think there are aspects of it that would be helpful. Because some of the things is the kind of things that would be most directly applicable to someone's game tend to be somewhat circumstantial. On this team, these are the shots you're going to get, and these are the shots you shouldn't take. That can change, and who knows how to predict that. So much of the recommendations that come from an analytical frame of thinking do depend on sort of the competitive environment we're in. Like how proficient of a scorer do you have to be a good scorer in today's NBA is a different question than it was 10 years ago. I think the biggest lesson that it might help is and this is sort of as a little teaser, kind of where the book is starting. The number one rule is the scoreboard is the only thing that matters. And when I say that, it's not like your team's number going up. It's the difference between your team's number and the other team's number. And so figuring out whatever makes that happen matters. And the things that don't.
You know what I think at the lowest or the youngest levels, I should say, really matters is like getting shots on target. You know what I mean?
And getting shots on target, you know what that means? It means like, okay, take care of the ball.
Yeah.
You get a shot up every time.
Yeah.
You don't turn the ball over. You don't let the opponent get multiple shots up because you take care of the back, like the basics of basketball, understanding some of the statistical underpinnings. Maybe it helps, but it's also, I think that's a way of making it a little less foreign, because
Right.
you talk about the things that we talk about in the analytics field, and the language is different, but it's the same thing every coach you've had has told you. Get good shots. Don't let the
Yeah.
opponent get good shots. Don't foul. Clean. Take care of the backboard. Take care of the ball. Like,
Yeah.
that's all. And those are the things. And the reason why those are the things that matter is those are the things that move the scoreboard in the right direction. Not
Yeah.
because it's it's not an aesthetic thing. It's a purely an effectiveness thing, because the only thing that matters at the end of the day is the final buzzer sounds. You have more points than the other team. What can we do to give ourselves the best chance of doing that?
Yeah. That simplifies things in a lot of ways.
I mean, it's a lot of very complicated math to come to pretty simple conclusions at times.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Seth, great stuff. You're working on a lot of different things. The book, The Athletic. There's other pods going on. There's writing. Tell what's going on lately. So where can we find you everywhere?
So from a writing standpoint, you can find me at The Athletic. You can find me at Dunked on Prime.
That's right.
I'd be remiss in saying that that Nate is offering a 1 month free trial right now for Dunked on Prime, so you can get
Nice.
all their pods, my writing, some of my proprietary stats, access to a pretty active Discord. And it's funny because these are all kind of the side gigs. My main job is actually, I work for a data company that's trying to bring similar concepts in American football to college and pro teams.
You have I gotta learn like productivity hacks on your side. I mean, you're working on a book, you're working with The Athletic, you're working on this stuff with Nate, and you have a full-time job, and you have kids.
When you put it that way, I'm a madman.
You are, man.
And
You
it
are.
helps that it does help that most of the people I work with, it's a company that started in Europe, so most of the people I work with are kind of get a lot of my conversations and meetings and stuff like that happen in mornings, which sort of, hey, get those done, have lunch, and then kind of turn the brain over and move to a different area.
I thought you were going to tell me that you're on their time.
No, not quite. I don't like.
That'd be crazy.
No, I've definitely forced some meeting times. Can we make that 9 Eastern instead of 4, please? I know if that's your morning, but that's my middle of the night. Let's not do that.
Yeah, man. I know how it is. Like overseas, it's like the time is so like it was hard to. I mean, it was almost impossible to watch NBA. When I was overseas. Yeah, it was crazy.
It always makes me think. I do there's a this is going to sound so random, but there's somehow a like a drive time sports radio show in New Zealand that has had me on
Really?
as a frequent guest a few times. So it'll be funny because it would be like we'd be it'd probably be noon my time, like noon Monday my time, and I'd be doing Tuesday morning radio in New
Oh
Zealand.
wow, that's
Which
crazy.
is now with Steven Adams being hurt, they haven't wanted to talk to me quite as much. But it's always been a lot of fun.
Well, they might hit you up for the trade.
Yeah, it's that's that I mean it's kind of sad when you get to the point where guys who have been good in their careers kind of start to, because of injuries and age, like you think about it, Steven Adams, Victor Oladipo are two guys who were pretty damn good in their
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
and now they're
definitely.
just sort of the pieces shuffling around to.
I mean, the Vic injuries have been tough.
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
yeah, yeah. Seth, great stuff, man.
I appreciate it as always. Always great to talk to you.
Always great talking to you as well. Enjoy your week, and we will talk soon.
I hope so.